Here we see the reticular formation. This is going to help regulate muscle tone. It's going to alert the cortex with incoming sensory information, and we're responsible for maintaining consciousness and awakening from sleep. So kind of our alarm clock. This is why we find this system or formation all throughout the brainstem, because it helps us stay in contact with visual and auditory reflexes. The sensory signals coming from the body are moving through here as well. So this is helping us maintain consciousness. This is why pain can keep you awake. Okay. The cerebellum. So functions are going to adjust postural muscles. So our involuntary postural muscles will be controlled by the cerebellum, as well as fine-tuning conscious and subconscious movements. Okay, so kind of our remembered movements, remembering how to run without having to think about it every time. Riding a bike, for example. So structures of the cerebellum, arbor vitae, or tree of life. So highly branched internal white matter of the cerebellum. So just myelinated axons. Okay. Cerebellum is found in the posterior inferior portion of the skull and has two hemispheres just like the cerebrum. So the lobes that are going to make up the cerebellum, anterior and posterior lobes, this is governing subconscious aspects of skeletal movement. The flocculonodular lobe will contribute to balance and equilibrium. So most people remember the cerebellum by helping us maintain balance and our equilibrium. This is where we fine-tune those conscious and subconscious muscle movements. Okay, so again, big thing, coordination with skeletal muscle contractions and helping maintain posture and balance. The arbor vitae, that tree of life, is describing this white matter. Kind of looks like a tree if you squint your eyes hard enough there. Okay, the diencephalon, again, more the center of the brain. Three different areas, the thalamus, hypothalamus, and epithalamus. The thalamus is going to be known mostly as the sensory relay station. So it's going to serve as a relay station for all sensory impulses except for smell. Okay? So it's going to move those sensory impulses to a particular area of the cerebral cortex. So sensory information coming to the ventral posterior is going to move to a particular location of the cortex. And here you can kind of see we have some color-coded areas of the cortex along with the thalamus. Okay, the hypothalamus, quite a few functions happening here. Big thing is we're going to see a lot of control for the autonomic nervous system, but it is going to be found below the thalamus, hence hypo, meaning below. Okay, we're going to have multiple nuclei. We're going to help control body activities and major regulators of homeostasis. Okay, so emotions and behavior. So hunger and thirst centers are coming from the hypothalamus. Autonomic nervous system, again, so heart rate, respiratory rate, blood pressure, and a lot of digestive functions are going to be passing through this hypothalamus. And then we're going to regulate hormone release. So the information coming to the hypothalamus for the autonomic nervous system, say for digestive functions, we are going to help certain hormones be produced and released from other glands to help with digestion as well as heart rate and respiratory rate, such as with epinephrine. Okay, we're going to help regulate body temperature, again, by hormone release mostly. And then we're controlling circadian rhythm. so helping our sleep cycle. The epithalamus, big thing here, we contain the pineal gland. Pineal gland is going to secrete melatonin, which is for helping us fall asleep. This is also regulating our day and night cycles. More melatonin is produced during dark hours, so less light, more melatonin. The habenular nuclei, also found in the epithalamus, involved with olfaction. So if you remember a specific smell during a memory, this is coming from the habenular nuclei. So if you're thinking about grandma's house and Saturday morning and biscuits and gravy, it's coming from the habenular nuclei. Okay, so circumventricular organs of the diencephalon, in other words, areas around the ventricles, okay, monitor chemical changes in the blood, and because they are lacking the blood-brain barrier, so we can really tell what's going on in there. So we have the hypothalamus, a portion of it is there. We have the pineal and pituitary gland, all helping out. So we're helping maintain homeostatic activities of the endocrine and nervous system. So our two communicative systems in the body are helping being controlled from the circumventricular organs. All right, so the brain, the cerebrum. Mostly what people think of when you think of the brain. It is the largest part. We control higher functions. We have cerebral hemispheres, a left and right, by dividing at the longitudinal fissure. This is where that falx cerebri dives down to the center of the brain. And then we have surface layers of gray matter. This is our cortex. Okay, this is gray matter. This is going to contain cell bodies. Then we have folded surfaces to increase surface area. These are going to create gyri and sulci. And then the deeper grooves are going to be the fissures, like the longitudinal fissure. Okay, deep in the cortex, we have white matter that is going to connect the two hemispheres of the brain. This is known as the corpus callosum. This is a thick portion of white matter connecting the two hemispheres. So here we see those folds of cortex. Raised areas are gyri. The depressed areas are sulcus. And then the larger depressed areas are fissures. The reason for the multiple folds of the cortex is to create extra surface area for connection of these neurons and the cell bodies. It creates more surface area. That is the reason for the gyri and sulci. All right, so areas or lobes of the cerebrum: frontal, parietal, temporal, occipital, and an insula. So these lobes coordinate directly with the flat bones of the skull, except for insula, of course. Okay, here we see the frontal lobe is going to have voluntary motor commands. So when we think of moving our arm, this is coming from the frontal lobe. Thinking in general, decision-making and planning, and then our personal characteristics as well, all coming from the frontal lobe. So higher thinking, and then voluntary motor commands. Parietal lobe, we are processing sensory information. Parietal is going to be where we take in sensory information, we store that sensory information, and decide what to do with it. If we send it to the frontal lobe, if we send it somewhere else. Occipital lobe is visual stimuli, straightforward. Temporal lobe, we process auditory and olfactory stimulus. So this is going to be hearing as well as smell coming to the temporal lobe. Insula, so this is more of an internal lobe. We have self-awareness, so being aware of what is around us. Pain and social emotion. Okay, so the central sulcus is going to separate motor and sensory areas. This is going to separate the frontal and parietal lobes. So motor areas, we see precentral gyrus. That means it is in front of that central sulcus part, the very beginning of the frontal lobe. This is going to direct voluntary movements. Sensory area, postcentral gyrus. This is the part of the parietal lobe. We are receiving somatic sensory information, so this means touch, pressure, pain, vibration, and so on. So if you were to reach over in the middle of the night and try and grab your phone, this is where that information is going to, and hopefully you remember what your phone feels like. This is where all of that information is coming to. Okay, so here's an anatomical look. See all these white matter tracks. This big, thick white matter area is going to be the corpus callosum. Okay, basal nuclei. These are gray. This is gray matter areas embedded in the white matter. Again, nuclei are masses of gray matter containing cell bodies of neurons. Okay, we're going to regulate, initiate, and terminate movements. Okay, so this again, the basal nuclei, if you remember, this is where the substantia nigra produces dopamine and limits the function of the basal nuclei because we are controlling movements and regulating muscle tone. Okay, we also have eye movement here, subconscious contractions of skeletal muscle as well. So this is where if dopamine fails, if you've ever seen somebody with Parkinson's, they have the pill rolling effect. It looks like they're trying to roll a pill uphill in their fingers, or they have the head shake. This is because the basal nuclei continually sends out signals to those muscles from the subconscious contraction of that skeletal muscle. Limbic system. This is our emotional brain. I like to think of it as kind of the zombie brain. This is where we're going to find a few particular subconscious controls if everything else is shut down. So, cingulate gyrus, emotions with memories. So if somebody says something to you when you're a little kid that angers you, and later on in life the same thing is said, you may get angry all over again. Okay? The hippocampus, this is for memory storage. So you are actually pulling memories from this area. The amygdala, this coordinates emotional responses to stimuli. So largely the sense of smell. The amygdala is also going to be where anger and rage come in. So the emotional responses to stimulus. Okay? Functional organization, so sensory, motor, and association areas. Again, sensory will receive information. Motor will control the execution of the associated areas' response to the sensory. These are just some areas labeled for a different type of information. Left and right hemisphere. We have some different brain waves while we're awake during sleep, or during emotional stress. All right, and that is it for this video.